What's up, guys? Hey guys, if you want our help in setting up a personalized meal plan or a personalized training program, or both, we can actually do that online for you on our platform and get that done through website, Robin.
Yep. So jump on www.lntonline.co.nz, sign up. We'll have the questionnaire, fill that out. We'll take care of the rest.
Awesome.
Why is it everything? First of all, I'd like to say thank you for joining LNT with a cup of tea.
LNT with a cup of tea. It's been a long time coming. We're trying to get this podcast done for a while now.
It's only 2 years. Good things take time.
Just trying to give the people what they want.
I'm having pure green tea. I've got a question.
Okay, go on. Talk to me.
This would be suitable for a carb-free diet. Would this give me any energy? Well, I'm just saying. I just want to start this topic off right. We're here to talk about carbohydrates. I'd like to say carbohydrates for performance.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Welcome to the LNT Podcast.
Yep.
Basically a place where we're going to be talking about anything to do with health, performance, diet, nutrition, training. We'll be bringing some evidence-based approaches, some papers, as well as some of
the stuff that we've gone through.
Exactly, some bits and tricks that we've gone through.
The clinical pearls, because think about also research is subjective, right? The amount of people, the thousands of people that we've worked with, even their stories, what they've gone through, what's worked for them, what's worked for us. Like, I understand, don't get me wrong, evidence literature. We read articles all the time and read the research, bring it to the people. However, I think there's also a lot to learn from just the experiences.
I think so. I think the more people you come across, the more you realize how dense and how complex the whole theory is. It's not very, black and white. It's not one size fits all. So you do come across a lot of challenges and you learn from them. Yeah. You learn a lot from anecdotal data, I guess.
Yeah. Well, think about it. Okay, so you played, you think for football, right?
Yep.
Okay, so you'll obviously know the stats better than myself. But, okay, what does the average, let's just say midfielder?
Yeah. Yeah.
What they run? Not even at, I'm not talking about like professional level, but elite club football level.
Absolutely. So they're covering, many of them, majority, if you're looking at semi-professional to professional, they are covering well above, double digits and kilometers per game, especially central midfielder. You're getting close to 13, sometimes 11 to 13 kilometers a game.
Yeah.
So all that is going to require energy, right? Yeah. And the quickest form of energy that we can get is from our glycogen stores.
Yeah.
And we get it from carbohydrates.
Yeah.
So we will get into the, nitty gritty of that.
Yeah.
We've got a few questions that we will cover and touch upon. We might run away off tangent every now and then.
Always.
Based on our experience and everything like that. But I guess, what do you want the people to know about carbohydrates by the end of this?
Well, okay. So first of all, I want to say that when looking at carbohydrates, we're looking at, I guess today, at the moment, going to be looking at performance-based, right?
Yeah.
So bodily function.
Yeah.
Because I want people to understand that we're not looking at fat loss.
Yeah.
For at the moment.
Yeah.
And we may head that way later off the discussion. But when people say, I want to perform better. Yeah. However, I don't eat carbohydrates. I always ask them why.
Absolutely.
Which I always find an interesting topic of discussion with, when working with clients.
Exactly.
And that just recently happened with a long distance runner.
No, there you go.
This. Okay, so to put into context, early 40s. So I wouldn't say old by any means.
Yeah.
Took up running to take care of his body composition.
Yeah.
However, started to enjoy running so much, wanted to compete. And when I mean compete, it's like start with your 10K fun runs.
Yeah.
Then go into your half marathons.
Yes.
And then building up to a marathon. And I was like, man, this is awesome. Like, changed his lifestyle. Cool. So then now it's gone to a point where his half marathon is easy for him.
Uh-huh.
So now he's thinking a marathon.
Yeah.
However, it all started from not eating carbohydrates for fat loss.
Yeah. Yep.
And so the initial discussion was with him is like, you understand that you've just taken out a subcategory of food and you're just decreasing your calories.
Yes, absolutely.
For the fat loss. And he's like, I don't know. And I was like, okay. So we had a further discussion. But now I need to convince this individual to introduce carbohydrates.
And it is time and time again, we come across people like this which is probably why our first ever podcast on the LNT podcast, we chose carbohydrates, because it is probably one of the most discussed and one of the most misunderstood topics in terms of nutrition and in terms of health in general. Yep. Fat loss is a big factor, which we'll probably come across or cover in this podcast as well. But time and time again, we hear it. There's many misconceptions, many misunderstandings around the topic of carbohydrates.
Yeah.
One of the big ones is the ratio. Everyone talks about what's the correct ratio. A lot of people talk about fat loss. Oh, I'm having too much carbs. I just need to cut my carbs and I'll lose fat.
I've got a question for you specifically.
Yeah.
What do you think is too many carbs?
Well, if I'm basing it on evidence or I'm basing it on myself.
No, on you, because you've been in the health game now for a very long time.
Absolutely.
So I'm just curious, because you've gone elite level of football.
Yeah.
You still to this day play high performance football now.
Yeah.
You do running, you do gym. So I'm just curious for you that trains sometimes 4 to 6 times a week, depending on your schedule.
Yeah.
Okay, 2 things. Okay, I want to know what is low carbohydrate intake for you, and then what would you consider high, and when would you use one or the other if you were to?
Absolutely. So basically, if I'm thinking about 60% or less of my daily caloric intake, if it's less than 60% coming from carbohydrates, there's probably a problem, and I'm not doing something right. And I can run it, and this might be a shock to many people, I can run it as high as 80% of my daily caloric intake. And we will talk about ratios later on, whether if really realistically there is one correct ratio, or it really depends. Okay, so it depends on your level of activity. We've got top athletes running at about 800 grams of carbohydrates a day. Okay, and this is top level, especially when we're talking about endurance athletes, because of the importance of glycogen, which we'll run across later on. So that's high. When you're running that high in carbohydrates, obviously that's going to be a significant percentage of your daily caloric intake.
Yeah.
And that depends also. If you're an office desk worker, obviously you will be taking a lot less carbohydrates. Yep. But that percentage, if we're looking at daily recommendations of World Health Organization and so on, it tends to sit at around that 60%. But I will go on and further to explain that some people might need a lot higher than that, and as high as 75 to 80% of their daily caloric intake coming from carbohydrates.
What sort of population would you say? Because, we're working with, a fair bit of performance people as well.
Absolutely. And this is the thing, even if different performance people might be requiring different amounts. Okay. So if we're looking at a power athlete, for example, an Olympic lifter, as opposed to a marathon runner that you brought up with, that ratio might need to be skewed. Okay. If you're a power lifter and you're having 80% of your caloric intake through carbs, chances are you might not be taking enough sufficient proteins. If it's 10%, it might not be doing it for recovery, for one, and also for muscle building, because the muscle mass required for obviously a power athlete is going to be a lot higher.
Yeah.
Endurance runners is a completely different story. Okay, they will be just fine with running super high in carbohydrates and limiting proteins to lower amounts just for that recovery. They obviously tend to hold a lot less muscle mass than power athletes.
Do you think it's sorry to interject, but do you think it would be the powerlifters that we're working with?
Yes.
Or, the Olympic lifters, or more the serious bodybuilders?
Yeah.
Do you reckon it's because of you already spoke about requiring muscle mass and sustaining it?
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on those bodybuilders that hold high amounts of let's just say massive quads and want to store that energy into those muscles and the liver?
Absolutely.
Versus the marathon runner? With the lifter, do you reckon they would need because of holding it and needs to train and expelling it just from the resistance training.
Yes.
Do you reckon there's a maximum percent that or a minimum that they would need to actually sustain their resistance training versus the marathon runner?
Absolutely. It's kind of a double-edged sword, this question, because we can approach it from two different directions. For example, any muscle use, whether it's for endurance or building muscles of lower repetition builds, you're going to need your glycogen stores, both from the liver as well as the skeletal muscle. So, and if we're looking at glycogen stores and where they're most sufficient and we're most using them is literally from minute 1 to minute 80. So about 80 minutes, sometimes you can go up to 100 minutes where we're using these glycogen stores as the predominant source of fuel for us.
Yeah.
Once we've depleted them from the liver as well as the skeletal muscle, then we start going through lipolysis and breakdown or mobilization of fatty acids to start breaking down that. Now that's a process. It takes a little bit longer and the body goes under a little bit more stress to actually extract the energy from fat. Obviously, fat has a lot more energy. If we're thinking about carbohydrates, it's about, per gram of carbohydrates, we're getting 4 calories. As opposed to fats, we're getting 9 calories per gram. So yes, it does take longer. And leading on from 80 minutes onwards, we're thinking more about using adipose tissue for energy. So if you're a bodybuilder and you're lifting weights in the gym, the predominant source of ATP, which is adenosine triphosphate, which is basically the energy currency in our systems, we're using carbohydrates to extract that. For the first pretty much your whole gym session, that's going to be your main source. We do extract a little bit from protein, and protein breakdown is actually minimal. It sits at about 5%. So it's nothing too crazy, but we will talk about the importance of having carbohydrates before, during, and after exercise as a source of proteins, because it's protein sparing, right? If you're loading up on carbohydrates after exercise, it's important because you don't want to use that protein as a source of energy. You want to use it for...
You want to keep it on your biceps.
Yeah, you want to keep it...
Let's be honest, you want to keep it on you.
This is the whole reason I've sat in this angle so that people can see the bicep.
You want to keep it on you.
Otherwise, what's the point? Might as well not have carbs.
Man, there was a... okay, so we're from New Zealand, Aotearoa.
We should probably introduce ourselves and what we do. We've jumped straight into carbohydrates.
Yeah, no, we're good. We're good. Robert and Marvin from Aotearoa. the green land.
The green planet.
The white cloud. No, it was the reason why I say New Zealand is that there was research done for squash players. And I thought this was really interesting. So they simulated a sports match. They wanted to see, carbohydrates, what does it do 48 hours before you actually play your match, or the build-up, how much carbs you should actually eat. And they did low-carb, high-carb.
Yes.
And I found this real interesting because I dabbled.
Yeah.
I dabbled a little bit, and I know you're training a high-performance bloody squash player that could beat me blindfolded. But they looked into, and I'm going back, pure performance. Yes. They even looked at gas exchange, and they did that on the second look at heart variability. And what was really interesting is that the matches were quicker in terms of ending the game as well, in terms of duration, with those that had higher carbs to those that had lower carbs. And they looked at the lean body mass. So they were looking at 9.1 grams of carbs per lean body mass or lean tissue at the high end. And then they compared it. I think it was 2.2 to 2.3 grams of carbs per lean body mass. Yeah. And in terms of pure performance, stamina, and utilizing carbohydrates versus fats was better on those that had more carbs, 48 hours.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so I know that, and there's some conflicting evidence with carbo loading.
Yes.
But I thought that was pretty cool to look at it. Man, squash, have you ever played it?
Yeah, I think it's actually one of the most sports where you burn most calories.
It's taxing.
It is.
I think it's 600 to 800.
It's. I think so. It is around there.
Over the hour, right?
It is a sweat session, man.
Because you sprint like. Yeah. I'll play against my brother, and he'll make me like run.
Yeah.
Because I know that you're meant to stick down your lane. Yeah. So I'm doing intervals.
Yeah.
But for a very long time.
You're yo-yoing about, aren't you?
Yeah. And funny enough that I'm going to go off topic because I'm good at doing that. But I have done ketogenic diets.
Yes.
And because health professional, I need to experiment on myself.
Yeah.
And then I even took ketones.
Wow.
Yeah, because I needed.
You went that far.
Yeah, because I know that I needed to make sure that cognitively I could still function.
Yes.
Because carbohydrates, they cross the blood-brain barrier. We can use that, man. That's
Correct.
cognitive function right there. So
yes.
Anyway, I took ketos because I didn't want to be a dumbass.
Yeah.
Sorry for the swearing.
Yeah.
But I was still playing squash, trialing it, right? Now, I did this for 2 months because I wanted to see what would happen with my performance.
Yes.
Cognitive.
Yeah.
And I was actually testing, both doing saliva and urine to see if I was in proper ketosis. So I was actually measuring and making sure that I was quantifying and doing it correctly, right?
Yes, correct.
And this is just my personal experience. So I know everyone will have something different. But just for me, with squash, okay, I was slower and I would gas a lot faster.
Yeah.
And then also cognitively, I had to jump on in month 2, I had to jump on ketones just to make sure that I could cognitively function correctly, particularly when you're working with people.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was just my personal experience from going low carb.
Absolutely.
With a sort of endurance, high intense sport.
Yeah.
Have you ever encountered?
Well, I haven't personally encountered being that completely depleted on carbs. I not to the stage of a sort of a ketogenic diet. But I have experimented with different sort of amounts of carbs before football matches or high intensity trainings. And you did the
low and the high for football.
Absolutely. And not by choice. It's just what I chose when I was in my younger days, what I decided to eat for breakfast that day before the match.
For those that don't know, how long is a football match typically? Is it
90 minutes. So you get 45, 90 minutes.
Yeah.
So that's how long it does take. It can get quite taxing. So you do feel a lot of things in terms of. It's not just during the match. It's before, when you're warming up, during the match, as well as afterwards, and how you feel afterwards, whether you're completely drenched and depleted, mindset, mentality, mental clarity, all that stuff. It does have a huge effect. Yeah. I tend to feel heavier on my legs, and it starts from the warm up. As soon as we're doing the warm up drills, the leg muscles especially, they tend to be, you can almost, because of our backgrounds, I can almost feel that they're depleted. Those glycogen stores are completely depleted. Heavy, almost burning, almost like it's already, lactic acid is already starting to set in. So you can tell the muscles are looking for something, and you can tell that lipolysis is starting to take place, and it takes a little bit longer. Like I said, the first 80 minutes, you're going to need your glycogen stores, and if they're depleted, which they generally would be in a ketogenic diet, you will feel it, especially if it's an endurance sport or a high performance sport where the more intensity you're going at, the more you will feel it, you know? So that's from my experience anyway. And there is a lot of evidence to suggest as well. And in terms of the body does undergo some adaptations. And you tend to be, if you're on keto for a while, which we definitely don't recommend, which we'll go through later, you will go through adaptations where the body will try to find sources of energy and something called gluconeogenesis, where the body starts producing glucose through other means, not through converting glycogen into glucose, which is another whole process that occurs. It is definitely an interesting topic, and we will, I think, run across low carbohydrate diets and where they can possibly come into play if you're thinking about it. And when we're talking about ratios, if we're reducing carbohydrates that low, what are the risks and also what are the benefits? Because you can't...
risk of performance or risk for health? Risk
of performance, one thing, absolutely, but risk for health as well, okay? Because if you think about it, if you're running that low, if you want to say you're 3,000 calories a day in order to maintain and in order to perform, right? And all of a sudden, like you said, you've taken those carbohydrates right down, something else has to go up. And that's either protein or your fats, okay? Now, a lot of studies have been done. A lot of them have been done on rats and mice and finding about what is basically the perfect diet in terms of human health.
Yeah.
Okay. And when we look at this, they put mice into 3 different categories, right? One of these studies I'm looking at is one, and they looked at the ratio between protein carbohydrate ratio, right? So high protein, low carbohydrate, and they did another group with high carbohydrates, low protein, and another one they did it, I think, on low protein and high fat, and that was just another group there. And when we look at metabolic health, overall metabolic health, as well as looking at longevity, and the mice with high carbohydrate content and low protein lived longest and also lived a better quality of life. So the onset of diseases or aging-related diseases came on a lot later on in life, and no metabolic issues. When we talk about metabolic issues and metabolic syndrome and all that sort of stuff, we're talking a lot of it to do with insulin and with the processes of insulin and what they do to the body. So the high protein, high carbohydrate diet brought the worst markers.
Yeah.
Okay. In terms of longevity, in terms of overall health throughout the lifespan, and also the metabolic rate and issues with metabolic syndrome.
Yeah.
The high fat diet and low protein did similar things as well in terms of metabolic health and lifespan, but the one that gave off the best markers was high carbohydrate diet.
Yeah.
Okay. And we're talking about, you're hitting up above 65 up to 80% of your caloric intake from carbohydrates. So if you are a desk worker, and you're not into sports, you just like to do activities just to stay fit, stay mobile, do your exercise.
Yeah.
And if you want to live a long and healthy lifestyle, and this is probably for 80 to 85% of the population, shoot your carbohydrates high.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the message,
absolutely.
Right? And we're talking about health. We're not talking about weight loss or anything like that. Just talking about health, good biomarkers,
good mental clarity, good energy throughout life, low risk of disease, the risk of morbidity, mortality rates, everything just drops down. Okay. So 80% of the population, I'm sure that some people will fall into different areas.
Yeah.
And there are so many different conditions and health conditions which may require different sort of diets, and we might need to manipulate. But for the majority of the population,
message,
absolutely.
Up the carbs slightly.
Exactly. But the question is, which we'll cover later, is the type of carbohydrates. Yeah. Okay. Because a lot of people, there is a big difference between one carb to another carb.
Well, have you been to Sardinia?
Sardinia.
Is it Sardinia?
Or Sardina?
Sardina?
What is this?
No, what's the country? I'm sure it's in Italy.
Sardinia? Sardinia? Yes. No, I have not been.
We apologize.
It's to all the people from Italy.
But from everyone around the world, if we get things wrong, we try our best to make sure we get things correct in terms of pronunciation. No, the reason I bring it up, they got the most amount of Satorians. Like people that live over 100.
Oh, okay. Good.
Is it Sardinia?
I think it might be Sardinia, but there's also another. There's 3 different places. There's another place in Japan, small town. Many Centaurians there.
The fishing city. Exactly. Oh my goodness. Sorry, apologies.
So
Okinawa.
Okinawa. That's it. Those have huge.
Very good at martial arts as well.
Absolutely.
Very good at martial arts.
There's actually been a lot of studies done on Okinawa, Hawaii, and United States because. A lot of people obviously there is a lot of cross-relation from Hawaii to United States, and a lot of people migrated from Japan to Hawaii, and it's different time frames. Yeah. Okay, back in long time ago when they were in Japan, they started with this sort of more towards a plant-based diet, high carbohydrates. They moved into Hawaii and later on moved into United States, and you can see their health rating just continuously drop.
So you're saying health, health?
So Japan,
and then
Hawaii, and then the last one, worst health outcomes, was United States because they started developing sort of Western eating habits through the United States.
I've witnessed it.
Yeah.
I've witnessed, no offense to Americans, but I have seen the different colored cheeses you have.
Oh my goodness.
I have seen the portions of fizzy drink you can get.
Absolutely. We just had Costco open here in New Zealand, and it's a fantastic indication. They've got a whole aisle filled with cheeses. That colors I never knew existed.
For cheese.
Just cheese. Big blocks, massive. And
So then what's your thoughts on, okay, so I have my own perspective on the dairy industry, cheeses, meats.
We will cover that. But I just, before we do that, since we are on the topic of ratios and everything like that, and because different,
what the Centaurians eat.
And we just covered it earlier about in terms of athletic performance, and this is the trade-off, guys. So I wish I was to tell you that this particular ratio was perfect for everyone, and it's not. There is a trade-off. And if we're looking at aesthetics, if you're trying to look amazing, and we look at social media, the amazing sort of physique or the ideal physique for a male and the ideal physique for a female is obviously holding a little bit more muscle mass.
Natural, unnatural?
Natural. Well, let's talk natural. Right?
Okay.
You're requiring
good.
more muscle mass, right?
Yeah.
If we're looking at a powerlifter or a sprinter, you're going to need some dense muscle mass, okay? Some decent. So if we're talking about 80-10-10, that's very difficult, okay? Because
what do you mean?
80% carbohydrates,
carbs,
10 protein,
10 fats,
and 10 fats, and mainly what lies within that protein range, because 10 is very difficult, one, to repair if you're in absolutely crazy training regimen, and also requiring more or high density muscle in your system.
Yeah.
So you will need a lot more of protein synthesis. You need a lot more protein.
Yeah.
Okay.
What's protein synthesis?
Basically breakdown of protein in order to build.
Gotcha.
Muscle.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in that case, there is a bit of a trade-off, because we know in terms of for longevity, we need that high carbohydrate to protein.
Yeah.
Okay. Ratio. But if we were trying to peak perform optimally for a power athlete, or to look aesthetic and gain as much muscle mass as possible, that will need to be shifted a little bit.
Yeah, the ratios you're talking about, the percentages. Yeah.
And there may be chances that your longevity might not be as fantastic or as great.
Yeah.
Okay. The other thing is, for example, if we look at females and reproductive health, and there are some studies suggesting you possibly might need a little bit higher protein.
Yeah.
So again, there's another trade-off. So we're talking about longevity in terms of lifespan health, and then we're talking about reproductive health. If you're trying to bring a child, you might need higher protein intake. Yeah. At least for those times when you are trying to conceive a baby. Yeah. So there are these trade-offs, and which makes the topic so not one size fits all.
Yeah. So need to make it individualized.
Exactly, which is why it makes it so important to look at the person in front of you. If you're trying to set up for trainers out there, for nutritionists and dietitians, you can't. There's no one size fits all and be like, okay, you're going to be on this diet. It's going to fix everything. You're going to be fine. You'll perform well. So there is a little bit of give and take in that sort of.
So you can use it cyclically. So you can, if you're, let's say you went into powerlifting. Let's say you start football.
Yep.
Then you went into powerlifting.
Yep.
Then whoever's working with you could make those adjustments. For that short stint. Until maybe you want to finish that competitive
phase, and then you could absolutely. Then you come back. You can change that absolutely. Because if we are having that, there's plenty of evidence now suggesting in terms of high protein diet, and a lot of people protein. Back in the days, protein when it first came, it was life. If you're not taking enough protein, you're done. It is crucial. And it is important. It is absolutely important. We need protein, okay? Especially
I got brought up with eating protein for breakfast. So I used to wake up, have chicken drumsticks and nuts. Because the first 30 grams, and this was because first time went over to Australia, then went to the States, and then I won't name the strength coaches, but phenomenal, well-respected people within the industry.
Absolutely.
Some of them passed away now. But that was we're going back 15 years ago. That was the mindset.
It was everything. Yeah, forget about macronutrient. Just get enough protein.
Well, and get as much protein as specifically, this was rule of thumb. Now, this was rule of thumb. 30 grams. And the reason why is that the first 30 grams ingested of protein. So it wasn't like, you had to eat. So we're basically looking at 200 grams of meat for breakfast to give you.
Oh my goodness! To
give you trying to give you adequate amounts of protein, right? Because it was back then was the first 30 grams was going to fuel the organelle system, including the brain.
Oh my God! Yeah. And
so
that was the thing, and it was the god macronutrient protein.
It was there, and then
Yeah.
And then you make up everything else. It didn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
Not
even myself. I used to have chicken salad and I used to take the fork. I remember this. And I used to pluck the chicken and eat it. And everything that's left is just tomato, lettuce, all these fantastic, colorful vegetables. Because I was just looking at how can I get my biceps bigger?
It's unreal.
Yeah, so it is incredible and it is important. That's not to say that's not important, but if you look at the population that is protein deficient, and people get scared of it is below 3% of the population is protein deficient. And that's because that population is malnourished. They are usually below the poverty line and they cannot afford food. It's not that they're not getting protein in, is that they're not getting food in.
Yeah, they just magnified protein. That's all.
Exactly,
it's very different.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you look at research, and this is where there is that trade-off, because there have been plenty of studies suggesting if you are running on 20% of your dietary caloric intake coming from protein or more, you start to increase the activation of mTOR, okay, which we'll talk about what mTOR is, but it is super, super important for autophagy, okay? So the more mTOR is a molecule that's considered pro-aging, okay? The more protein in our diet, especially BCAAs, which we'll talk about later, but protein in general, the higher the percentage we're having, the more the production of mTOR, which is pro-aging, which slows down autophagy. Autophagy is basically the breakdown of damaged cells so we can build and renew cells, okay? And also slows down DNA repair, okay? So there's been plenty of studies saying that if we are actually running a little bit low on protein, okay, doing some protein restraint diets, have been shown to increase lifespan.
Yeah.
And there have been other studies showing if we were doing calorie deficits, we increase lifespan. But there's been new studies showing that maybe it's not the calorie deficit, it's the protein. And it's specifically the branch chain amino acids, the BCAAs. If we're doing some restrictions in BCAAs, people are living longer.
Yeah.
A lot of these studies have been done on mice, but something interesting that to look into. It's been repeated time and time again with studies. So,
do you reckon that's because also people, instead of like filling up like what we used to do, having your 1 kg of meat per day, do you think because let's just say you went down to, let's say 300 grams, if you were a heavy meat eater and you reduced it to 300 grams, it allows you for the carbohydrate increase, right?
Yeah.
But also the additional foods like eat the salad.
Absolutely.
You used to take the chicken out, but now you're
Absolutely.
eating the rest of it.
Absolutely.
Do you reckon that's also the health association to an improvement?
100%.
Because we're allowing for the other food groups.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You're making basically taking calories from other sources as well, and nutrient dense foods, right? If you look at, protein.
Like chocolate? No. Rice crackers? No.
On a good day, we wish.
No.
But your fruits, veggies, your grains, your legumes, all that sort of stuff. And funnily enough, that's all carbohydrate dense food as well.
Yeah.
Which we will go into what's good carbohydrates and what's bad later on. But yeah, I think it's if you're reducing that protein intake, you're allowing more space to have better, more nutritious, nutrient dense foods. Yeah.
So when you're thinking about fuel, so personally, I look at food as fuel.
Yeah.
Basically, that's it. Don't get me wrong. I don't mind the naughty stuff on the odd occasion, like if I'm at a wedding, example, eat the cake.
Eat the cake.
But is that the best for someone that's wanting to perform well? Let's just say you've got two plates.
Yeah.
Okay, and I said to you, Marvin, do you want the cake for breakfast or you want the kumara?
Yeah.
Or the brown rice as an example.
Yeah.
What would you...
Is this like Saturday night, Marvin, or is this like Tuesday morning, Marvin?
This is Tuesday morning. You've still got the rest of the week. You got training and you've got your football finals in 2 weeks' time.
Yeah.
Cake?
No. I would definitely go for the
high carb cake though. It's still high carb cake.
It will feel fantastic for the first 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And then, so, and that's a fantastic question you would bring up because it brings on the big question that we always get asked is the type of carbohydrate, right? They're both carbohydrates. And if we're thinking 80, 10, 10, 80 source.
It still fits in, right?
Exactly. It
still fits in.
And we'll look at what's happening, what type of carbohydrates, and we can split them in so many different categories. We can split them into, first of all, as simple as opposed to complex, simple. And they're basically what carbohydrates are is saccharide chains, okay? Made of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, okay? So if we're looking at monosaccharides, disaccharides, like your sucrose, your fructose, glucose, obviously, those are all simple carbohydrates. We find them in fruits and honey, that sort of stuff. They're sugar. So if we're looking at complex carbohydrates like kumara, okay, and these are more polysaccharides, okay, and you can split them into two different categories then again, which we'll talk about. One of the polysaccharides being fiber, which we'll talk about later, and the importance of fiber. And if you're technically speaking, if having more complex carbohydrates rather than simple, you are better off, okay, in terms of health related standards, okay. But that's not always the case. If you a lot of people think simple, stay away from it completely, okay. Not always the case, as opposed to fruits, for example. Some people are like, oh, fruits are sugar. Well, no, fruits, the sugar found in fruits is bound with fiber. So when you're taking it in, it's not necessarily causing an epic insulin spike.
It's not like having a lolly.
It's not
nowhere near
like having a lolly. Plus, fruits tend to be very nutrient dense. So you're missing out on so many micronutrients and so many minerals that are so fundamental for vitality and just life and performance in general.
So you say fruits, like if we were to say for people that aren't fruit eaters because they are afraid of the fructose,
absolutely.
We could say start incorporating it into your current regime.
Absolutely.
And don't be scared of it.
Exactly. Don't be scared of it. Gotcha. And a lot of the times we get clients coming in and we talk about nutrition. And like we said, there's so many different types of carbs. One of the main things I check is how much fiber they're having. Okay. Because that shows us and indicates a few things. It's not just about the fiber itself, but most foods that contain fiber, okay, and by definition, fiber is only found in plants. There's not a single animal product that contains fiber, okay? It's funny because 30% of the American population believe that steak is a good source of fiber. And there's been surveys done on that.
Really? I wasn't
aware. Yeah. So you can see the misunderstanding. And I don't know why the texture of beef, they think it's fibrous or something, and they think it's a good source of fiber. But by definition, there is zero fiber to ever be found in animal products. Okay, so it must be extracted from plant-based products. Okay,
so 35%. You've blown my mind.
30 to 35%. When asked, "What do you believe is a good source of fiber?" they said steak, meat. Yeah.
Wow.
This is a thing. We're really going into these Americans today.
Apologies. But is this the same? Well, I guess they were correct in saying that French fries is a source of vegetable.
Exactly.
Same population.
Exactly. Yeah.
Same population.
And that's again where we reach talking about another split, or how we can identify carbohydrates as processed as opposed to complex, whole, raw carbohydrates. Big difference. And again, one of the biggest difference is the fiber content. Processed carbohydrates. And we're talking about white flour, white bread, even things like white rice, cake, muffins, donuts, processed, contain little to no fiber, okay? And that's why fiber is so important, not just because of the fiber itself, because it has so many health benefits. If you look at different populations, and as they increase in fiber, reduce risk of heart disease, reduce risk of many different cancers, reduce high blood cholesterol levels, so many things.
Could you imagine those people with irritable bowel syndrome? How many people have you come across that will say, "Oh, I can't eat celery"?
No,
because it gives me irritable bowel syndrome, or I can't have an apple because it upsets my tummy.
Absolutely.
I personally feel, and in accordance with literature, I don't think that's the case.
No, absolutely not. And I think it's because we're also adapted to such little fiber. So dietary recommendations for fiber sits around 31.5 to 32 grams of fiber a day. Okay, obviously your body size matters,
on the average,
but this is the average person, I think,
right?
70 kg male, I think it was done on. So that's 32. The average intake of America is 15. So it says below. And I think
America, come on,
we're not that great. I think we're sitting on 18. Okay, so we are well below par. So, and again, this is another thing. If someone's on 15 grams of fiber a day, and I'll tell them, this is horrendous. Starting today, you're going to hit 32. They will have symptoms. A lot of probably stomach upsets. Things will go crazy. They'll feel very uncomfortable. And this has been reported time and time again.
You know what that is, man?
That's
the liver and the kidneys doing their job.
Yeah.
And flushing out poor pathogens stored within the body.
Your microbiome is so confused. It does not know what to do with that. So it is recommended actually when you're going up on fiber is to go up 5 grams a week and go up very slowly. Sometimes maybe a fortnight or a month, whatever it takes. Okay. Just because you're increasing fiber and you're feeling a little bit upset or bloated or a little bit more gassy, that's expected, especially for the first month of that transition.
So you're saying that's normal with the change?
It is normal with the change. So you either do it gradually, which I tend to recommend.
Yeah. How would you do it?
5 grams increase a week, maybe a fortnight, depending on how they're reacting to it.
Would you say just add 1 piece of fruit a day, and then the following week maybe add an additional 50 grams of veggies and just get people to sort of measure?
Getting your whole grain, mixed grain bread, pastas, all that sort of stuff. It's maybe counting it for the first couple of weeks to get an indication of what you were on and how much we're going up to. Yep. It's very, very important.
How would you get someone to, let's just say someone new, not really used to this, let's say they're at the 18 grams of fiber. Yeah. What is a take home that you could give someone right now? What bit of advice to help them reach that target?
Let's say they've discovered or they still haven't discovered how much fiber they're having. We can usually, we're at the age where technology is always right at the click of a finger or tip of a hand. So we can use applications there's so many right now, MyFitnessPal, MyFatSecret. There's another one, Chronometer.
Also, we're not getting paid for any of this stuff. Yeah. If we drop pay
us if you like, but
we don't get a cent. There's no monetary transaction. We just want to get that straight now. Okay.
But just helpful applications that a lot of our clients have used. We've used them ourselves as well. Yeah. They are good. It's not good to become fixated on them all the time, but they are such valuable educational tools to see where your diet is and what you're currently eating. Yep. It's kind of important. You've got one body. Might as well make the most out of it.
Take care of it.
So monitoring that and then slowly increasing fibrous food. Yep. And a lot of people are taking fiber supplements, which defeats the whole purpose. No. Right? The whole reason we take fiber is not just for the fiber itself, but because fiber tends to be found in nutrient-dense foods. Yeah. So if you're taking fiber supplements, you're defeating half the purpose. You're
missing out on everything else,
You're missing out on so many micronutrients and also minerals that are found in fiber-rich
But couldn't you take another 20 supplements to get all those minerals and vitamins?
Yeah. Man, the greatest scientists still haven't figured that out because of how complex, what a symphony there is of chemical reactions that occur.
Would you like to explain to the people about the apple versus the vitamin C tablet?
Absolutely. The apple, the apple and the vitamin C tablet. This was a study done in China, I believe. But it looked basically at green apples and the vitamin C ascorbic acid content of green apples as opposed to a 1,500 milligram of vitamin C tablet, okay? And they basically looked at the immune system function and the effect that it does on the immune system after consumption, okay? So they compared 2 different groups, one of them having green apples, which by the way those green apples contained an average of 6.3 milligrams of vitamin C, as opposed to the 1,500 found in that
singular capsule or tablet?
Easy to take tablet, okay? And the difference of immune system activity was 6-fold towards the apple, okay? Really? So 6 times more effective taking that 6.3 milligrams as opposed to the 1,500 milligrams. Why? Because you cannot take, research has become so reductionist. We look at vitamin C, only vitamin C, we hone down on it. This is what it does. We'll take it, we'll consume it, and it'll do this to our system. No, it doesn't. With the other 100,000 of chemicals found in the apple, that's probably going to need to activate the ascorbic acid and undergo those chemical reactions that's going to help our immune function. If you're not consuming them, and if you're taking solely, a lot of that 1,500 milligrams is going to waste, the majority of it. In fact,
you're literally urinating your money away.
You're pissing your money away.
So without the several hundreds of phytonutrients from that apple,
absolutely,
which helps utilize that vitamin C, we will just urinate the vitamin C away.
Absolutely.
Every month.
And that's it.
And no change in our immunity.
Absolutely. And this is what's crazy about it, because if I take a green apple and say I'm lacking in sleep, I'm a little bit tired and I've got a little bit of a ticklish throat, and Robin is very healthy. He's had fantastic sleep and he's been great, and he has the same green apple as I do. The chemical reactions in your body will be completely different to mine, because mine is looking to help my immune function.
Yep.
So there'll be specific reactions, and hundreds of thousands of them, that'll be occurring in my body to try help me, whether for you, they might be utilized or stored for different times or a rainier day.
Yep.
So you can't decide what chemical reactions occur. This is why it's so infinitely complex. And that's why supplement industry is bullshit. Really, because to the majority of this, okay? And obviously, if you've been prescribed something because you're deficient and blood tests have shown this and you've been medically prescribed, go ahead. That is a different story completely.
Do it. You listen to your medical practitioner. If somebody is saying you need, let's just say, intramuscular injection of vitamin B12, we're not saying don't have that. Rely on a natural source. There's a lot of clever people that are doing really good things.
Absolutely.
We're not saying get off medications. We're just bringing what we know
and bringing it
to the
context.
Table.
Yeah.
Because so if you're healthy and you don't need to rely on, let's say, vitamin C.
Yeah.
Have the apple.
And you haven't been tested or been deficient on anything, and you're doing well. Chances are taking supplements will, 1, do nothing. 2, get you maybe ever so slightly 0.3% better.
Would you say,
or you might get worse?
Would you say similar, like, how a lot of people will take, let's just say they have alterations in like blood pressure or heart rate, and they've gone a potassium supplement. Would you also say just similar, just so we're very clear with people, eat the banana?
Absolutely.
Okay. So
absolutely. Unless you've been medically prescribed to take something else, 100%. You cannot mimic the effects of nutrient-dense carbohydrates and what you get from them through a tablet. And
so super exceeds just the carb. We are looking into, once again, going back to the healthy
absolutely goals. Absolutely. And this is where it becomes all important. And we can look at about, if we're looking at different sources of carbohydrates, fiber content is a great indicator that you are having the right sources. But also, there's been, we talked about earlier in this session, there are some athletes who are requiring up to 800 grams of carbohydrates a day, okay? If you are having fiber-rich 800 grams, it's very difficult to tolerate for the stomach. And there's been studies to suggest that for top athletes, okay? The ingestion, it's just quite tough, it can be quite uncomfortable. And fiber makes you feel full. If you're trying to lose weight, it's a good idea.
Did it say what the fiber content was for those people having 800 grams?
It is. So they've done different tests, and it's recommended. You obviously have a decent source of fiber.
Yeah.
But it's just very hard to consume all that. Say you go have breakfast and you're having 300 grams of carbohydrates on breakfast. You're going to be full or feel full for such a long time, That's why sometimes for these top endurance athletes, processed carbohydrates, they tend to go towards the gels, things like that. Again, not ideal for optimal health, okay? But sometimes it's required for performance, okay? It's important. So yes, that makes sense. If you're having 800 grams of, don't have only fiber-rich carbohydrates. First of all, it's damn near impossible because you'll feel so full. You just can't stomach it all in, okay? Second of all, it's a lot of fiber for that stomach, okay? So for every day for the 80% of the population, fantastic. Have your source of fiber. But and same for athletes, but it's very difficult to stay on fiber-rich foods, you know? So sometimes that processed or more simpler carbohydrates might be the go-to in between sports. And we'll talk about maybe GI in a little bit, glycemic index and
I'd like to add with the, you know, you're talking about more the endurance-based elite athletes at 800 grams sort of per day.
Yeah.
I know that we're not talking about fat loss, but I just want to indicate there are some professional, like sort of more bikini models / physique that will still consume 300 grams of carbs per day.
Fantastic. Yeah.
And that's even cutting.
Yeah.
So that's how beneficial carbs can be. And they're still performing well at the back end of their training, peaking.
Absolutely.
So I'm not a coach specializing to get people up on stage, but I just want to indicate like that's quite high carbs.
It is.
And these are some 60 to 65 kg females.
Absolutely. And it, like you said, it comes down to the energy source because these guys are training, they're in training regimens are insane.
Yeah.
They're training 6-7 days a week. You're going to need your glycogen stores to continuously be renewed. You're going to be needing not to cause any protein sparing. So you're going to need those carbohydrates high to
maintain the adequate output.
Absolutely.
And that's what it's about.
That's the thing. It's energy, right? And it's not just energy about, I'm going to do a squat. I need the energy for that. But after training, the body internally needs energy for protein synthesis.
Yep.
Right? If your glycogen stores are depleted, that synthesis has been shown to be slowed down. So you're actually not making as much. First of all, you're not repairing the muscle as well. Second of all, you're not building new muscle. That's for sure. So it's important to consume carbohydrates before to provide enough energy before the training, as well as after, so that you're actually allowing enough energy for protein synthesis to take place in an optimal sort of rate.
And you have our endurance training for your ultras, which Marvin and I have worked with quite a few people.
Yeah.
Even during. And that's where you gel. So that's what Marvin already touched base on.
Yeah, if we're looking at ultras, like I said, 80 minutes, you're depleted.
Yeah.
So if you're not taking during, you're going into lipolysis, which is fine. And you're naturally going to do that anyway. You're going to shift that. But it will definitely help a great deal to take in and just start fueling and taking basically simple glucose into your system so it can be used constantly as a source of energy or keep you going for a much longer time.
Yeah.
So that's super, super important. And it's a good point that you brought up.
And going back down the breakdown, how you're talking about the fiber content, even looking at the endurance athletes that, you know, break the body down. And when that body's breaking down, going back to like the minerals and vitamins, so everything like on a sort of more segmental level, even like having that mineral loss, like magnesium as an example, if you're not having enough of the fiber content or your kale or your greens to increase that magnesium, they actually get stripped from the bone.
Absolutely.
So then you get your osteoporosis, osteopenia. So even looking at like, I know we're talking about carbohydrates, but significance of it, upping them.
Exactly.
So that's up your carbs, up your fiber, and you're going to sustain even bone.
Definitely.
Just from increasing that magnesium though. So there's so much to it, to the adequate carbohydrate intake.
It is. There's so much to it. It's not just about energy source. Like you mentioned, Robin, it's about the nutrient density in carbohydrate rich or complex carbohydrate foods, right? You've got so many micronutrients, so many different minerals that are going to be essential, not just for performance,
and having enough
for life.
And having enough, like the amount of people, first of all, saying that they do pick up their carbs, but then still as a whole, still under eating.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important for people to understand is that you want to up those carbs first. If you are under eating. So let's just say Marvin and I did the calculations for you and you're actually meant to be eating at 2,200 and you're currently eating at 800 calories.
Yeah.
I'd just say, would you agree? Just say, okay, just get those 400 calories up by carbs.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. 100%. Yeah, you would. If they're going fine with the, obviously fat's important, but we've got to have that minimal base of fat. And 10% tends to be more than enough for majority of the population. And you're getting your decent protein, you would up the carbs.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And if it's performance based, up the carbs. So that's the important thing. Do not be afraid of carbs. I don't know why everyone tends to be afraid because the first thing you think about carbs is the pizza dough or a burger, then absolutely that's processed. Okay?
Well, be afraid of it, but then that's coming.
Be afraid of that.
Have you had a fat-free pizza? Have you had a fat-free burger?
No.
Man, look on some of these packages.
Yeah.
It's actually quite alarming.
Yeah,
and I reckon there's more the association to, if you're coming off that processed stuff, it's the fats that's going so high.
Yeah.
But then what will give? Your protein and carbs would have to drop. But if the carbs don't drop, then what do you go for? Like, let's just say 30% fats.
Yeah.
Then are you going, let's just say 50 to 6% carbs and then 10% protein?
And you're skewing the
That's
whole
not
thing.
healthy either.
Not healthy at all. And we can look at it from metabolism and what happens with insulin when we're taking that sort of stuff. And we're talking about insulin resistance and basically the gateway of diabetes, type 2 diabetes, which is, you're raising the issues with diabetes in terms of heart disease, atherosclerosis, so many terrible things.
I've never heard of a carb narrowing an artery.
Yeah, exactly. Unless it's processed to the day.
If someone has had a clogged artery from carbohydrates, please let us know. Or if that has led to a stroke.
Exactly. And that's what it is. It's about, and we talk about glycemic index, which is basically an index created by Jenkins, I think his name was, in the 80s. But he basically created this to give an idea of how quick, if you were to consume a particular carb, how quick in your bloodstream would it take for it to convert into glucose and be ready, right? So high GI foods would transition very quickly and be converted into glucose, ready to be used as energy or stored.
It was sugar energy. That was the mark rate as 0. Is that correct?
I believe so. I believe so. But if you have a low carbohydrate, low GI foods, take longer.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you're having brown rice, for example, it's going to take a lot longer than banana, for example, to be converted into glucose. So it is sort of a range you can see, right? Generally, the higher the GI, the quicker or the more rapid the insulin spike. Okay. To explain to those of you who don't know what insulin does, is basically it is a hormone that's secreted by the pancreas, I think the beta cells of the pancreas, and their job is basically to stop or reduce the use of fat as energy and the increase of take-up of glucose from the blood to the skeletal muscles as well as the liver, okay, to be used as energy. All right, so constant spikes in insulin, if you're having processed carbohydrates, low in fiber, processed, causing, high in fiber foods tend to be, they don't convert into glucose that quickly. But low in fiber foods, processed, will cause an insulin spike. Constant insulin spikes, your body starts getting, used to it, and you start getting insulin resistant, right? So there's more insulin being secreted. The body's not picking it up for some reason. The cells are like, we don't want the glucose. We can't pick it up. The receptors are shut. So your muscles, your muscles as well as the liver is not picking up any of that glucose to be used as energy. So starting to use fat and increase the production of fat, right? And that's what's happening, because once the muscle cells become high in fat, that blood fat circulates and it goes to the liver.
Yeah.
And we get a fatty liver, which we know what fatty liver can do, and the multiple adverse health effects, not to mention the blood vessels when you're starting to develop atherosclerosis, is that fat overload because of insulin resistance is starting to circulate around the vessels and causing the narrowing of the arteries that you mentioned, okay? Fatty liver eventually leads to a fatty pancreas, leading to diabetes, and the rest is history, So
that would make it very hard for, and I know we're not talking about it, but even hard for fat loss.
Yeah.
A fatty liver.
Absolutely. And a lot of people think, carbohydrates for fat loss. Actually, a rich carbohydrate diet and produced from whole foods, rich in fiber and nutrient-dense foods, is shown to be insulin sensitive as opposed to insulin resistant, which is another misconception. People think if you increase carbohydrates, you're going to get diabetes.
So if better receptors and signaling, you're going to perform better.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, if you're increasing carbohydrates in terms of fries and burgers, yes, you probably will get diabetes, okay? Because you're causing insulin spikes the whole time, and you're basically starting the spinning ball towards diabetes. So another thing, so it's not just about having high fiber, it's understanding the other concept of it is processed as opposed to complex.
Yep.
There's a big difference. So when we talk about 80-10-10, if you're taking 80% of your carbohydrates from processed, very unhealthy.
Man, I'll put it this way, like over the span, how's Rebecca now? She's going on 11 years of age.
Rebecca, your daughter.
Yeah. So for the last 12 years, I've competed in CrossFit, powerlifting, and jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
And the reason why I raise this is like how I've had to eat and change my eating regime around those times.
Yeah.
Man, it's undulating. Very, very different.
Interesting.
So CrossFit and jiu-jitsu, quite similar.
Yeah.
High output, high input, and from carbs.
Yeah.
With the powerlifting, that was very different. Yes, I had output in terms of strength training and got bigger, but not in terms of like cardiovascular output. So very, very different eating regime.
Yeah.
So, but I would eat so clean on all occasions because I had to perform really, 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 really well, and I just felt better vitality.
Yeah.
Coming off those training cycles, let's just went through a micro bad patch. It was very interesting to feel the vitality change. Okay, so
interesting.
Man, I might as well. Yeah, so that I find is subjectively interesting in terms of how you feel on a day-to-day.
Yeah.
So that was going to, like, let's just say the burgers and the pizzas. Now, I know we're talking about performance for athleticism.
Yeah.
But I think even performance for your business person, the person that's studying, the person that wants to do just well in life, about eating these good carbohydrates, getting the fiber up, getting those phytonutrients up. And then, you know how you're talking about gastrointestinal health.
Yeah.
Well, what burden does that actually have? Like, I know I felt a bit crappy from having the burgers and the pizzas.
Yes. Yeah.
I felt heavy.
Yeah.
It felt uncomfortable, felt sluggish, vitality. Do you think that has any consequence going back to, like, I don't know, it was serotonin a bit crappy, was gastrointestinal microbiome? What do you, like, what's your thoughts on why I felt that way? I'm quite curious.
I think, it's multifaceted. I think there's so many different things involved, and hormones could be part of it. But another thing is, and there's so much studies on it now, is the microbiome. You know, if we look at, I think the human genome.
What would you say the microbiome? Is that like my organelles, bacteria?
The bacteria,
the house,
the lining of your stomach, your intestines, all that consists of bacteria.
Like my stomach universe.
The stomach, and there's a reason. It's so important because there's a reason why they call it the second brain, because it really decides.
I thought for guys we had a different second brain. Hold on, apologies. Is that the third?
That's a different brain.
Okay, gotcha. Please continue.
We'll discuss that in a different podcast.
Okay. Oh, okay. Man, we have to talk about sexual dysfunction.
We will talk about that. We will.
That will be a different time. But
I think.
Okay, please continue with the second.
It's a good topic, though. I think we've got
okay, please, second brain.
But yes, it's second
microbiome.
Microbiome, because it does decide. Sometimes it instigates what the brain. What the brain needs to do, you know, what hormones to secrete. Because if you've got, everything's about survival, right? And your bacteria, the bad bacteria, you know, when you're starting to have burgers, for example, and you're starting to form bad bacteria in your stomach lining. All that cares about is survival. And that type of bacteria craves sugar. It craves sugar. And
you're talking about the survival of the poor bacteria?
Absolutely. The poor bacteria needs to survive. So when you, and it needs, so it indicates to the brain, right? I need sugar. Every time this person consumes sugar, I want you to release a shit ton of dopamine to make them feel great because I want to survive.
And once again, we're talking about bad bacteria.
And we're talking about bad bacteria. That's why when you're transitioning into a really terrible diet and you want to make the transition and you want to start eating healthier, and your body starts to, your brain's not secreting as much dopamine because the bad bacteria is fighting it. It's saying, what's this person up to? He's killing us. We need to change things. That's why it's so hard. And you start having cravings and you want sugar and you want candy and lollies and all that. Yeah. So that's why it's called our second brain. And I always tell people the human genome consists of 20 to 25,000 genes. Mm. Our microbiome consists of 7 million. All right. So are we predominantly human or are we predominantly bacteria?
Yeah.
It's a lot, and it's hard to just brush that off and not talk about it. And I think that's one of the main reasons why you're feeling terrible is because your whole microbiome would have changed and it can wipe out completely. It can change up to, I think 80 or 90% of the microbiome can completely change within 2 weeks or so of eating bad.
I can personally say that's what would have happened.
I think, and that's why you feel so sluggish.
Yeah. But even a bit low.
Yeah.
Like I'm talking about mood.
Oh, so
peaking up towards the comp.
Yeah.
Man, fiber on, good carbohydrates. Like everything was just on point, right?
Yeah.
So even mood was elevated. Like at the pinnacle, right? You're ready to compete.
Yeah, how incredible. It's incredible, absolutely. And there's been studies, I think it's been done on rats as well, where they took a smear of the stomach lining of an obese rat, okay? And they put it into an athlete rat. They put that smear of microbiome into the stomach of the athlete. So if we go back to the smear of the bad bacteria. From the lining of the obese rat.
Yeah, and then they put it into the healthy.
Let's call them the athlete rat, the healthy rat.
Okay, so we've got the lining, bad bacteria, boom, taken, put it into the athlete rat.
Yeah, and by the way, the diet and the caloric intake of the athlete rat is fixated through the study. Throughout the study, they are eating exactly the same amount of calories.
Yeah.
That athlete rat turned obese, eating the exact same calories.
So that bacteria was able to multiply, manipulate the rest of the organelle system in the athletic rat.
Change the whole metabolic rate, change everything within. And they are not taking extra calories. That is what's phenomenal. And this has been done with Crohn's disease as well, where they've taken smears of the stomach lining of a rat with Crohn's disease and put it into a completely healthy rat with no gene specific for Crohn's disease. And that rat developed Crohn's disease.
I'm not sure if I'm making this up. But this reminds me of, has there been some studies done on feces, on healthy feces and ingesting healthy feces into fat? Sorry, not fat. No. Well, obese people.
Basically taking healthy feces, which basically,
because that still carries bacteria,
absolutely, right? Absolutely, it carries good, healthy microbiome.
Am I making this up? Or
no. It's a thing. This is a thing. This is why.
Is it still an ongoing thing?
It is an ongoing thing. It is obviously not much talked about, but it is an ongoing thing. I forgot in the book Microbiome Solution.
If somebody can
doctor from Australia, it is a thing. I forgot what it's called. Yeah, if you can
let us know if you know more about this.
Yeah, I forgot what it's called, but they basically take the feces off someone. This is crazy. They take the feces off someone with a very healthy microbiome, and they put it into someone who has a problematic microbiome, whether they've got Crohn's disease or irritable bowel syndrome or any issues to do with microbiome. And it does turn things around.
Yeah.
It takes things around. I
think I watched the documentary on it, to be honest.
Yeah. And whether it is to increase the production of lactobacilli, which is a healthy bacteria in our stomach. But there is fine work of one of the doctors from Australia who's written the book Microbiome Solution. I don't remember her name, but she does mention that in her book. It's very, very interesting. Obviously, it's not very appealing for some people, but hey, it's shown to have some beneficial.
So if we're going back full 360, right?
Yeah.
So the healthier the microbiome, the better utilization of the carbohydrates.
Absolutely.
Up the carbohydrates, better performance, right? If we're going back full circle, because everything is
everything's interlinked. Absolutely. And it comes down to that. The same thing with microbiome and to do with fiber and how healthy fiber is to the microbiome. There's even studies to show if you're taking high fiber with protein, because you can consume about 30 to 40 grams of protein in a meal. A lot of it will go to waste because it just passes through our intestines too quickly to be all absorbed and used. So if you're taking 60 grams of protein in a meal, it's unlikely that all of it is going to be absorbed. But taking fiber actually slows down the mobility of that protein, allowing more time for protein synthesis or protein metabolism to be extracted and taken into our system.
You could actually ingest it.
Yeah, so there's been studies done on that as well. So it's something to think about, having fiber-rich carbohydrates or processed carbohydrates after training with protein source. So yeah, very interesting. Which reminds me of another question a lot of people have been asking is the time of day or time of consumption of carbohydrates and whether it matters. It always says, can we have it? Doesn't matter if we have it in the morning. Doesn't matter if we're having it at night. And this should be for the lay person, for people, desk workers, or the 80% of the population. This will be the last thing you should be thinking about, is making sure you're having decent amounts. Making sure having the right types of carbohydrates. Those are the things you should be looking into. Okay, there's
enough and the type, right?
Enough and the type.
Two things you guys can take home and start doing it.
You're done. It's all accessories after that.
Yeah.
But there has been studies shown, and I think we've covered this. We were looking here in New Zealand, in Maori and Pacific communities, in terms of skipping breakfast or having low carbohydrates in breakfast. And if you're skipping breakfast, they tend to have a higher caloric intake throughout the day. And it's been shown time and time again. And they've actually broken it down to macronutrients. If you have low protein, you tend to be eating way higher protein throughout the day. And if you have low carbohydrates in the morning, you'll tend to be eating a lot more throughout the day. And that might be to do with satiety levels. And because, Personally, I've been through it myself where I've skipped breakfast, for a long time, and I haven't been eating. I've been busy at work, going through clients. By the time it's midday, I'm so hungry, but I'm not hungry for nutrient-dense food. I'm hungry for calorie-dense food.
Yeah.
I just want some calories. I'm so hungry.
Well, if bad bacteria wants to survive,
exactly,
you as a whole needs to survive.
Yeah.
So that makes sense.
And it's a survival trait, right? You want something dense. And and it's accessible. And nowadays, everything dense is accessible within the click of a button, You can get something dense.
Uber Eats.
Yeah. And you tend to actually overshoot. So if you're looking for weight loss, best thing to do is actually have a carbohydrate-rich breakfast or a decent, dense breakfast that's healthy and filled with nutrients.
Yeah.
You will tend to eat less, or you're less likely to overshoot your caloric intake throughout the day.
Yeah.
So interesting point there. And it's been shown in multiple studies. But the other thing about the timing of carbohydrate comes when we're talking about athletic performance.
Yeah.
Because it's obviously important. And I think we've covered that enough for this session about the importance of taking carbohydrate before, during, and after sports, and why it's important to take them.
As long as you're replenishing it, right? Like
absolutely.
For you guys that are listening / watching, just basically carbohydrates run a 24-hour cycle. So if you're eating carbs before training within the amount that's suggested, and afterwards, at least you're going to be replenishing those stores. So then it becomes bioavailable for your next training session or member sustain for function of living.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And for the average person, our stores can hold 400 to 500 grams of glycogen in our skeletal muscles and another 80 to 110 grams in our liver. Okay. So that's quite a lot. Think about 600 grams or more of carbohydrates or glycogen that needs to be stored for energy. So we do need to replenish quite a lot of that. So we need to have dense carbohydrate-dense foods to replenish all that, okay? Make sure you also stay hydrated throughout the carbohydrate process, because for every gram of glycogen stored, there are 3 grams of water in line with it. In order for the storage to increase. Yeah.
Don't worry about the weight increase either.
Which is why we talked about ketogenic diet. And yes, for weight loss, it is effective because you're having less calories. You're having less carbohydrates, but also because the reason why they get that instant, quick drop in weight, and it's like very motivating, they get a 2-3 kg instant loss, is because they're stopping the uptake of carbohydrates. They're reducing their glycogen stores, and the water is getting replenished. We talked about 1 gram of glycogen to 3 grams of water. So it's quite a bit of water that's depleted, about 2.8 kgs of water for the average person. Yeah. So when you see that for ketone, it's like, oh, wow, I've lost quite a bit of weight on this diet. Okay. Yeah. And that's why people get motivated and think it's the right thing to do. But
I would be interested, anyone out there, because obviously we're talking about carbohydrates, more looking at the health benefits, and then looking at sporting performance or just performance in general. If anyone is actually on a ketogenic diet long-term, and I'm talking long-term, we're talking a year or more, that sincerely performs really, really well at their sport that's more endurance-based.
Yeah.
I'd be really interested to know, because me and Marvin, we're not anti anything. We just like facts.
We like to throw the research out there. A lot of people ask us, what's your opinion on this and what's your opinion on that? Yeah. And the answer is, who cares what our opinion is?
It's just an opinion.
It's just an opinion.
How does my hair look today? Exactly. You could be like, beautiful. and then it's just an opinion.
You'd accept that.
I would love it. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, but all we're doing is basically throwing out the research out there, throwing out what we've experienced on our day-to-day life. We work in a clinic/gym-based environment, so we are running and seeing so many people, and we see a lot of patterns going on. So it'll be interesting to hear about the whole keto diet. And I guess with research, and what I suggest is that if you are, and I like to simplify it this way, if you are willing to sacrifice your health for fat loss, go on a keto diet, but don't go on it for too long. Okay, there are plenty of studies, and it's just not just a ketogenic, any sort of low carbohydrate diet. We look at Atkins diet, the same thing, high protein, high fat, and we've talked about mTOR, about what it does to DNA disrepair, what it does to autophagy. We talk about the insulin resistance and what that can do, especially with increase of fat. We talk about increased risk of heart disease, increased risk of different cancers. Obviously, if you're having that much low carbohydrates, you're having a lot higher protein and a lot higher fat. And these are specific foods that
I'm real curious.
Interesting to
and even if you're come from evidence-based research, you're in the realm of ongoing studies, masters, PhD, whatever it may be. Even if you would like to sit down and have a discussion with us, I'm real curious to have that open discussion and shed some light for people, because from what we've read and what I've experienced, I am, and this is my biased opinion, carbohydrate based. But that's because what I've read and what I've gone through.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I'm real interested if somebody has had the opposite to us.
Oh, maybe if it's if you've had personal sort of anecdotal data that you've gathered yourself, or you've had a case study.
I've even done blood, by the way.
Function. Yeah.
I've even done.
And there is
bloods.
plenty of studies to show what ketogenic diet does to your system and how it functions and everything throughout that. So. But I think anecdotal data would be nice. A lot of people, I think, who are on it for so long tend to forget what it used to feel like beforehand, and having a different sort of diet. But that'll be quite interesting.
Yeah.
That being said, I think we always like to talk about lifestyle and in terms of habits. And since we've recommended, high carbohydrate uptake as well, have you got any sort of pointers or recommendations to do throughout lifestyle and habits to adapt a healthier diet in terms of higher carbohydrate content? Anything like that, or things to do with family or experimentations?
Because when it comes to family, that's hard.
Yeah.
So when I was single by myself, because I could manipulate my diet how I saw fit, very, very easy.
Yeah.
As soon as you move in with your partner or various flatmates and people want to eat together, that does get challenging.
Yeah.
However, I always think that, first of all, why? Yeah. Like I need a goal of why I want to eat well. So for me, if I can base it around some sort of sporting performance or maybe seasonal, I find that really easy to manipulate my diet and stay on track.
I like the why.
Yeah.
Why do I need it? I think that's a big motivator for a lot of people, because if you put reasoning behind it, I guess there's drive.
Very easy to stick to.
Very true.
Vitality. I always like to feel good. So I like to do like an energy check.
Yeah.
Because that's something you can do sort of most days.
Very nice.
So I know, let's just say this morning I woke up, let's just say I had a pizza.
Yeah. Did you have a
pizza?
pizza?
I wouldn't.
Yeah.
Because I'll be like this.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
And so vitality check, I like that as a tool and a strategy, because I always want to feel good.
Yeah.
Not many people know, but I did do a challenge a long time ago where I bulked up to 100 kgs unhealthily. And then there's a whole thing, a whole lot of negative consequences that happen, which I think that's going to be a totally different discussion. But yeah, my strategy is like, okay, why my goal? And then trying to get like my family on board, like why I want to do it. Hopefully that motivates them, and then we can all collectively make the change together.
Yeah.
I think that's really, really important for making those habitual changes. Tracking, I like to track. Not all the time.
Yeah.
Not all the time, but I do like to like weigh my food, make sure I'm staying on track, always looking at my meal plan and abiding by my meal plan, because then that becomes a habit.
Yeah.
I know it's very cliche, even shopping.
Yeah.
Don't shop hungry. I know it's a cliche, but I think it's very important for people to remember that as another habit, to make sure you're shopping well. Another cliche, but don't have those tempting foods at home.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's one of the things. If it's not at home, it's a bit of a, more of a task for you to grab hold of it, right?
Would you go get a pack, like let's just say you wanted Pringles, right?
Yeah.
There's no Pringles at home.
No. I've got too much stuff to do.
Are you going to go
I've got no
really
time.
Shoot down for one pack of Pringles?
I would have to be absolutely dying, craving for that. Like it would have to be life and death.
I'm too lazy to do that.
It's I think that's the biggest thing, if you go shopping, and if you don't have it at home, you don't have processed carbohydrates, you don't have too many sugary, simple sugars at home, chances are you're making it harder. You're setting yourself with a barrier for you to it's less accessible.
To get it. Yeah.
So it's a step in the right direction. And I think it's a fantastic thing to do. And even with the family, or have a limited amount of snacks at home. That you have to, one pack of chocolates that's got to last you the whole week.
Yeah. Well, we do it at home, right? So the ladies like popcorn.
Yes.
So I know it's not that calorie high, and that's all fine. And I don't want poor food habits also associated to life.
Yeah.
So, but what we'll do is Friday or Saturday night, the girls will decide.
Yeah.
That's when you have your popcorn or chips or whatever it may be. But the cool thing is the next day, boom, they straight back on. Straight back on to their veggies, their fruit, their legumes, whatever it may be in terms of how the family is eating.
Yeah.
Very easy.
Yeah.
Very easy. So, but for them also, like I always think for myself, like feeling good, having fuel to train, it's always here. I'm always thinking about it.
I think so, yeah. And I think once you get into that lifestyle and think about it in terms of performance, and like you mentioned, Robin, it's not just about athletic performance. It's about performing in the office. It's about performing in your relationship. It's about performing mental clarity and having vitality and being happy in life.
Yeah.
Nutrition is important,
yeah.
And it's hard to, just scrape it under the rugs and try to fix other aspects in life without thinking about nutrition as well.
Make it a part of you. I think making it a part of you is really, really important.
Yeah, and just I guess being more conscious. And listening or educating yourself about this stuff, because you are consuming it on a day-to-day basis. It's going in your system.
Yeah.
So it's kind of nice to understand the research behind it, and whether it's good for you or not.
Yeah. And if you've been born with a blessed physical body that's able. And I mean, man, I feel privileged and grateful for my legs. I can move my arms. So I think what you're saying before, one body, one opportunity, maintain it.
Absolutely.
And I know a lot of people say, for their car, they'll service their car. And I know a lot of people say, well, why don't people service their body? But service your body.
Yeah.
Like it's really that simple.
Exactly. And it then becomes a part of your lifestyle, and eating healthy is not, obviously every now and then we'll have, cheats and stuff like that with family and friends. But eating healthy, when it becomes a part of your lifestyle, it's not actually a chore. No. It's completely normal. Bodily systems, we're probably getting similar dopamine releases, with healthier foods as some people who have become
right?
Exactly, or some people who become so tolerant to unhealthy foods. So we get a lot of people. Sometimes I'm eating the lunch that I've packed from home, and people will come and say, "Oh, come on, Marvin, live a little." I said, "No, I want to live a lot."
Yeah, exactly.
I want to live a lot.
Exactly.
I don't want to live a little.
Exactly.
And I'm enjoying it, and it's good. It's not like a chore for me. You find joy out of having these different foods, and I think that's one of the different. Another sort of recommendation that we can recommend to people is experiment with foods and experiment with legumes, for example. I think. Only 30% of the population has enough adequate amounts of legumes.
Yeah.
And a lot of people think, legumes, vegetarian. No, you don't need to be a vegetarian to consume legumes. Just have them as a part of your diet.
Add it in.
It doesn't need to be.
And
they are so affordable, very affordable if you buy in bulk.
Yeah.
And so nutrient dense, rich in great source of carbohydrates, rich in fiber, fantastic, good source of protein.
Yep.
They've got it all. So I think a good recommendation will be experiment or look up some dishes with legumes and try to incorporate them into your weekly dinner or lunch. I think that'll be a huge turning factor for a lot of you, because a lot of people just and for some people who are asking what legumes are, any beans you can think of, which I think there are 101 different types of beans. You got red, you got kidney beans, black beans, you got chickpeas, all that, black-eyed beans, all that sort of stuff. So experiment with that. Look for some recipes online. There's plenty out there. You don't have to be a vegetarian. Just enjoy those meals. You will find something you like. Okay. And like you mentioned, tracking is also a fantastic tool for education as well to alert yourself. And another one,
you can change it, right?
Absolutely. And maybe the simplest thing you can look at is what we talked about, fiber. Because if you're having enough fiber, chances are, and you're not taking it from supplements, chances are you're having a pretty nutrient-dense diet because you're having a good sources of whole complex carbohydrates. So aim for 32 grams of fiber, or slowly increase it from where you're on. If you're on 18, start to build up towards it, and within about 2 months, get to 32. Another nice recommendation. Yeah.
I reckon also, it's actually Dr. Louis Weaver. So she's a New Zealand doc. She's quite cool for changes, right? She wrote the book Accidentally Overweight.
Overweight.
Yeah. But I like her. One of her key messages in that book, and I read this, would have been a long time ago, was just trial it for 4 weeks. And I've used that for a long time. And the reason why I like that is then it doesn't become scary. So example, if I say to you, Marvin, okay, I would like you to eat this way for 4 weeks, monitor how you feel, how your training has improved or not improved, your mood, just give you some measures. If nothing changes for the positive in 4 weeks, go back to what you're doing.
I like it.
I could honestly say 100% success, because there has been nobody that has eaten well, improved their training, that has not dropped weight, has not felt better, has not performed better. So what did they do? They're like, I'll stick to it.
Absolutely. I think 4 weeks is a kind of a good number, because initially you do have your regrets for the first week. You might have cravings. So if you bypass all those initial barriers.
What were you saying? 2 weeks for the microbiome alteration, right?
Yeah.
So in weeks 3 and 4, you're like, hold on, that apple tastes a bit sweeter. That's nice. That's my new dessert.
Absolutely.
Oh, this rice, I can eat it plain. It tastes good. these things actually start to change.
Your taste buds, and don't forget, there is microbiome in our mouth as well. Your taste buds start to adapt, and they start, maybe apples will start tasting sweeter.
Yeah.
Microbiome is changing, and there's plenty of microbiome in your mouth. So changes can occur there, lower down into the stomach. That is a really, really good point that you brought. Your microbiome, as it changes, your taste buds will adapt also.
Yep. So I reckon, everyone try a bit of a 4-week challenge. Up the carbohydrates, make it adequate for yourself. Measure some sort of performance base. It could be like, maybe you feel better, you end up walking more. See how your mood's tracking. Are you a bit happier? Do you walk around for a bit of a skip? A bit more of a smile on your face?
Are you nicer to your spouse?
Yeah.
Are you fighting less?
Or
are you arguing less?
Are you nicer to yourself?
Yeah. Do you get agitated as much? All those factors we're raising are actually found in studies with in ketogenic diets as well. In terms of mood, you get a little bit grumpier. So try
Eat the carbs. I'll take a message. Eat the carbs.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. That's a good point. I think these were really the main questions that we've been asked about. One of them being the ratio. So hopefully you get a better understanding of the ratio and the importance of carbohydrates being the dominant of that ratio of between 65 to 80% of your diet, of your caloric intake coming from there. We hope as well we've shown you a thing or two in terms of the different sources of carbohydrates, the importance of fiber, and the effect of insulin the effect of carbohydrates on insulin in terms of processed as opposed to complex.
The health benefits of having adequate carbohydrates and what they do.
Absolutely.
On a systemic level.
We also talked about time of consumption of carbohydrates, day and night, as well as performance-based when we're looking at before, during, or after an activity or high-intensity activities, exercise, and also habits that we've come across day to day with our people as well as with ourselves, with our families.
And it's never easy. I'd like to say it does get easier.
Yeah.
But always work at it. Always work at it.
Always. I think that's a good take-home message, is just to trial out, give it a go for 4 weeks, increase that carbohydrate intake. Do not be scared of it.
Yeah.
Give it a go.
And perform well.
See how you feel.